This snake's future looks grim, with only a few moments left to live. Snakes in general are intriguing creatures that tend to be underappreciated by many people, only because few know the truth. I've stumbled upon some info that many people overlook, but let's run through it step by step. In 2008, scientists found 3 dead eastern Massasauga rattlesnakes with swollen and disfigured faces. The nasty discovery was made in the woods near Carlisle, Illinois. At the time, it was the 9th year of a long-term threatened species monitoring program. But no one had ever seen something like this happen to snakes before. The reptiles' faces were so disfigured that experts first thought the poor things had just been run over by cars. What else could have caused this kind of damage? Good afternoon. What are you complaining about? I've got bumps here, a cough, and my vision's all blurry. Okay, let's listen to your chest. Hold your breath. Now take a breath. Well, everything seems to be all right. Are you sure? Good, because I was so worried. Let's write it down to getting hit by a car. While biologists and scientists considered these as isolated incidents, snakes continue to vanish at a disturbing rate. It's been 15 years since then, and the situation has only gotten worse, leaving everyone unsurprised, only scared, and for good reason. Look at this snake. Its body is completely covered in sores and blisters. Here's what the snake looked like before it got sick, and here's what it looks like after. The once smooth and shiny scales have become distorted. The eyes have grown cloudy. Weird bumps have surfaced beneath the skin, but the way it looks isn't the biggest problem. The actual issue is the deformities this disease brings about. The fungus distorts the snake's faces to the point where they can't eat, see, or sense warmth anymore. This means sick snakes are unfortunately destined to slowly waste away due to starvation, and there's nothing that can help them. The root of this dreadful disease, known as ophidiomycosis, is Ophidiomyces ophidiodicola. This keratinophilic fungus is believed by scientists to be closely linked to another fungus that suppresses a snake's immune system, leading to its eventual demise. Yeah, quite a family they got there. So far, about 30 species of snakes infested with ophidiomycosis have been found in at least 15 U.S. states. Many of the other 3,000 species of snakes that exist on our planet are also vulnerable. While snake fungal disease is currently more common in the United States, it's also been observed in captive snakes in England, Germany, and Australia. Many experts believe that infected snakes can be found worldwide, and even in the most isolated areas. This indicates that nobody is immune to it. This thing is spreading. Unfortunately, it just keeps on going, and that's because it all began much earlier. By the way, here's another interesting point. They've recently found that the fungus is present even in some museum specimens of snakes dated as far back as 1945 and collected in different places across the United States. So the fact that it was found in 2008 means nothing at all. That year wasn't the beginning of the infestation, it's just that there was so little of this fungus before that no one really paid attention to it. Well, except for the affected snakes, I guess. So what's the deal? Why does it seem like the fungus has gone wild in recent years, trying to take over the world? So here's the thing. Normally this fungus lives in the dirt, decomposing dead creatures, that is, doing what it's supposed to do. Why it suddenly decided to infect snakes is anyone's guess. But you know how scientists are, always coming up with theories. Snakes are still grateful for the theories, but what should we do about it? Naturally, scientists consider changes in the environment as a potential factor. For instance, during a cooler and rainier spring, snakes find themselves spending more time below the surface. This means they can't raise their body temperature, and you do remember that snakes rely on the ambient temperature, right? That's because snakes are cold-blooded, so their body temperature will match the surrounding environment. Without a warm body temperature, snakes can't effectively combat infections, which leaves them more vulnerable to diseases. Finding the right habitat to stay healthy has also been a challenge recently. As usual, no thanks to humanity, you're not welcome. In truth, one of the main ways humans influence the emergence of new pathogens in the wild is by carrying these pathogens to new locations. I'll explain how it works. In their natural habitat, diseases may not pose a significant threat because the animals they impact and the pathogens have co-evolved over time. You could say they adapted to each other. It's more like they've synced up, and that's usually how it goes with humans too. But when people unknowingly carry a disease to a new unfamiliar area, then bam! Here you go, a full-blown epidemic. Just sign right here, please. The same thing happened when Christopher Columbus landed in what is now America with his small army. Did you think Columbus just stumbled upon something? Well, yeah, but he also brought something else along. The Spanish and the indigenous people had close interactions engaging in trade, which unfortunately led to the spread of infectious diseases. What was harmless to the Old Worlders proved deadly to the New Worlders. So we have no idea why the fungus infects snakes, but maybe scientists have at least figured out how it does it? Well, kind of. Turns out there is some information after all. The fungus can infect a snake slowly or, on quite the opposite, aggressively. In the latter scenario, it's tough to help the infected snake because the fungus often works swiftly, leading to a quick death. It all starts with simple body lesions that quickly spread and cover most of the snake. Due to numerous blisters, the unfortunate reptile picks up additional infections that it can't fight since its body becomes too cold and weak. In severe cases, it's game over for the snake within a couple of days. Ironically, in such cases, a swift death is almost a blessing. No thanks. Don't. No. Honestly, it's harsher for the snakes, which the fungus kills slowly. They can't eat, yet they're stuck with a relentless hunger. You might think if things are so rough, why can't the snake simply shed the infected skin along with the fungus and then slither away in perfect health? I mean, it's a snake after all. Actually, snakes do just that. Scientists have observed that when a snake is infected slowly, it actually speeds up its shedding process trying to shake it off. Sometimes the snake gets lucky and the disease just stays on the old skin without going deeper. But those snakes are the lucky ones. Super rare lucky ones. It's not as quick and easy as you'd hope. Usually, snakes don't manage to shed the infected skin in time, which allows the fungus to penetrate the soft tissues, leading to a point of no return. But that's not even the sad part. The fungus can spread when a sick snake's skin touches a healthy snake. It's not limited to snakes of the same species living together or hibernating. Transmission can occur even during courtship and mating. I think that's how the disease spreads. Have you seen how snakes dance? Additionally, the fungus can spread from mother snakes to their offspring. It's making me wonder if snakes stand any chance of survival at all. At this pace, the renowned snake-infested island of Cay Mata Grande in Brazil will transform from one of the most perilous places into a haven. For us humans, of course. Based on different estimates, there are approximately 2,000 to 4,000 snakes inhabiting this small island. That's from 1 to 5 snakes per 10 square feet. So you can imagine that snakes are practically all over the place. If a fungus were to accidentally make its way onto the island, it would almost certainly wipe out the entire snake population. That's mainly because there's an abundance of snakes in close proximity to one another. This would not only impact the snake population, but also the island's appeal. Honestly, the thought of snakes disappearing isn't a good one. Not on any island, not anywhere in the world, because let's face it, without snakes, we'd be in for a real apocalypse. Snakes help keep the rodent population in check, but if the snakes are destroyed by the fungus, the number of mice and rats could increase dramatically, and the rodent, in turn, spreads ticks and other parasites that are transmitted to humans. Ever heard of the Black Death, the second plague pandemic that occurred in the 14th century? Just to clarify, it's the deadliest pandemic in history, with an estimated 75 to 200 million casualties. According to modern theories, the plague was transmitted by rodents carrying fleas infected with the plague bacillus. Interestingly, during that time, snakes were thriving. Can you imagine the potential consequences if they weren't around? The experts are on the same page as me on this one. They stress the essential role of snakes in the ecosystem, and removing them could set off a chain reaction affecting almost every creature on Earth. A few years back, Eastern Australia went through a sort of snake mini-extinction when a mouse invasion hit. People in hospitals were getting bitten, inmates had to be relocated due to mice gnawing through the electrical system, and even classrooms weren't safe from these little creatures. Mice were just everywhere. Open the pantry and they'd eat your snacks. Plop on the couch and you'd have mice for company. Even your bed was no refuge. Lift the blanket and there'd be a whole mouse squad underneath. This nightmare had its reasons, of course, and we won't go into details, but something like this is to be expected if the snakes suddenly disappear. That's terrible enough without any plague. But what about the good news? Is there any to share today? Actually, there is. Other animals have experienced rapid population declines due to fungal epidemics, but snake disease works a bit differently. It progresses more gradually, resembling brief outbreaks, giving snakes a better shot at survival. Endangered species are the only ones in jeopardy, and they already have plenty of issues without the fungus. Let's hope for a positive outcome. Plus, people are doing their research. Apparently, sunlight helps snakes fight the fungus, so scientists are clearing forests to give the animals more space to sunbathe. Well, antifungal meds are already being tested too. In any case, experts mention that studying snakes is quite a challenge. So even if their population changes, people might not even realize it. It turns out we may never truly grasp the extent of the impact of this deadly fungus on snakes. What we do know is that, regrettably, it's not the only disease rendering animals defenseless, susceptible, and unable to survive. Rabbits too suffer from a similar disease, and it appears to be even more severe. When people first saw this rabbit, they were certain they'd stumbled upon a mythical and magical creature.
Do you see how to tell that this isn't something supernatural? It's recorded with a regular camera, and everything is crystal clear.
Afterward, this peculiar rabbit found its place in folklore, becoming the protagonist of legends and spooky tales. It earned the moniker jackalope due to its perceived blend of rabbit and antelope features, which was capable of mimicking human voices, singing along, having a fondness for whiskey, and reproducing during thunderstorms. In short, it's a unique fusion of a unicorn and a leprechaun with one key difference. Unlike the unicorn, the jackalope is real, and the truth about it is really dark. The rabbits and hares that inspired those legends are actually seriously sick. They're afflicted by the Shope papillomavirus, a cancerous strain similar to the human papillomavirus. In humans, it causes cancerous tumors internally, but in rabbits, it leads to the growth of hard, keratinized horns all over their bodies. Interestingly, this is the same material found in the horns of elk and rhinos, so you could call them the real deal, rabbits with horns, just like in the legends. The only issue is that these horn-like growths can sprout anywhere on the poor rabbit's body, not just on the forehead or near the ears where you'd expect them. Sometimes they pop up around the face and mouth, obstructing the rabbit's vision, leaving it vulnerable and even hindering its ability to eat. Such rabbits are in a tough spot. They can't feed themselves, so they slowly waste away from hunger. That is, unless predators get to them first. The last time people were reminded of this disease was around a decade ago when headlines worldwide buzzed about an animal known as the Frankenstein rabbit. This peculiar creature sported over 15 growths on its snout, earning it a sort of celebrity status. Nowadays, you can find the body of the poor rabbit in the collection at the Smithsonian Institution. Overall, this disease could be considered rare. This is partially because the Shope papillomavirus isn't a fungus and it doesn't spread through contact like in snakes. Nevertheless, when healthy rabbits come into contact with an infected individual, there's still a reasonable chance of them getting the virus. This is because tiny insect pests such as ticks, bedbugs, and mosquitoes are responsible for transmitting the virus. The real deer, however, are even more likely to get it. Like, just look at this. You see that? See? What the? The things you're looking at are called cutaneous fibromas and are solid tumors of varying diameters. People also call them warts, although they look frankly like a reenactment of that scene from The Incredibles. Okay, there's really nothing funny about it. Fibromas appear when the deer catches an infection. They can appear in various spots, but they tend to hit the eyes, neck, face, and front legs the hardest. The worst part is deer can have many fibromas, a lot of them. I mean, a whole bunch of them. It's almost unbelievable. We spotted 25 on a single deer, but experts say that's not even close to the maximum. Sometimes there are so many of these warts on a deer's body that they fuse together into a solid, lumpy mass, like the animal rolled in mud and ended up with a strange crust. The real question is how many fibromas a deer can put up with. Those lumps are definitely a problem and get in the way. Take a close look at how awkward it is for the deer to walk. Fibromas can keep popping up on a deer until it dies. Deer, in a way, share an unfortunate resemblance to both rabbits and snakes. These growths can sprout on the deer's face, obstructing its vision and making it difficult to eat. Oh, it's gotta be one seriously unlucky deer. Because experts say that really severe lesions are quite rare. More often, the bumps cover only a part of the body, and they're certainly nasty, but they still don't have fatal consequences. By the way, how and why deer get viral infections that cause fibromas is a mystery. Yes, we've got a bunch of disease-related content today. One theory is that deer pick up the infection when they come into contact with objects like trees that were previously touched by an infected deer. But there's got to be a deer that got sick first. Regrettably, there's no cure for the deer, although we can surgically remove the growths. In theory, a vaccine could be developed, but as long as it's only affecting deer and not too many of them, no one's really going to invest in that research.
It's a pity, but it seems that people will only step up when it's a massive issue and poses a risk of extinction.
Now take a look at this. At first glance, you might think this bat's got a little white mess on its face. You know, like when kittens get into a bowl of food. However, there's nothing cute about this. There's a hidden threat lurking in caves all across the United States. In just a little over 10 years, it's killed more than 6 million bats, leaving telltale white marks on their faces. There are marks on the wings too, but they're better seen under UV light. This crazy fungus goes by the name Pseudogymnoascus destructans. All you really need to know is that it's a real carnivore and literally burns bats from the inside. It gets into these creatures when they're in their deep sleep, and then it wakes them up, making them use up all their stored energy. Eventually, the bats can even deplete their fat reserves and starve to death, or if they go out during hibernation in search of food, they freeze to death. There's no good way out of this. Back in 2006, this fungus was initially discovered in New York State. Now you can spot it in 33 states and 7 Canadian provinces. It's safe to say this fungus is just a small piece of the whole global fungal takeover. It's like it's everywhere and nobody's safe. In the last 50 years, a deadly fungus has wiped out 500 species of frogs, toads, and salamanders worldwide. Just imagine, 7% of Earth's amphibians have disappeared since humans first spotted this outbreak in the 1980s. Scientists have officially labeled it the most devastating pathogen for biodiversity loss on the planet. With snakes gone, we can expect a surge in mice and disease outbreaks. But when frogs and bats also disappear, something even more troubling looms. Though you might wonder how much worse it could get. For decades, frogs, salamanders, and other amphibians have been fighting fungal diseases. During the most recent outbreaks in Costa Rica and Panama in the 1990s and 2000s, cases of malaria in humans skyrocketed by a factor of 5. That's because bats and amphibians prey on insects. When there are not enough predators, insects thrive, their populations increase along with the number of diseases they carry. Many of these diseases can be deadly. So here's the burning question that may have been bothering you during this entire video. Should we humans be concerned about fungi? Actually, the fungal kingdom is massive, with around 3 million different species out there. Most fungi prefer cooler temperatures around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so they usually can't thrive at the body's internal temperature. But there are some tough cookies in the fungi world. They thrive at high temperatures and can cause serious life-threatening infections. The good news is, at least we know about these fungi. The bad news, the world is changing. The fungus that caused the pandemic in The Last of Us is inspired by the actual zombie fungus known as cordyceps, which primarily targets insects. When insects fall victim to cordyceps, they lose control over their own actions as the fungus seizes control of their nervous system, eventually sprouting from their bodies. And as scientists suggest in The Last of Us, climate change will force fungi to adapt, learning to survive in warmer conditions. This could increase the number of species that can cause serious infections in humans, and there's some evidence that this may already be happening right now. The appearance of Candida auris, an exceptionally hazardous fungus on 3 different continents almost at the same time, could be attributed to rising temperatures. These more favorable conditions have facilitated the fungus's spread, and it's worth noting that it's resistant to nearly all antifungal medications. It's uncertain whether continued global warming will give rise to even more perilous fungal superbugs. Just to ease your mind a bit, fungal infections aren't likely to lead to a worldwide epidemic or a zombie apocalypse. However, you shouldn't relax entirely because the number of people suffering from serious fungal infections is on the rise. And we're not as good at treating them as we are with other illnesses. Treating these infections is a real challenge because the biochemistry of fungi closely mirrors that of our own bodies. To make matters worse, many of the old meds are losing their effectiveness due to fungal resistance, so it's clear that we need to start taking this issue more seriously before it becomes too late.
I better go find out what to do if I get a fungal infection.
See you later.